If I asked the question, what does the Lord require of you? Many, perhaps most of you, would instinctively answer by quoting Micah 6:8, to do justice, and to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God. But did you know there is another place in Scripture where the same question is asked and answered? That would be Deuteronomy 10, a very different context. Hello, I'm Stuart Baskin, pastor of First Presbyterian Church of Tyler, Texas. Here's what Moses says to the children of Israel as part of the sermon we've been following most of this week. He says, "So now, O Israel, what does the Lord your God require of you? Only to fear the Lord your God, to walk in all his ways, to love him, to serve the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul, and to keep the commandments of the Lord your God and his decrees that I'm commanding you today for your own well-being. Although heaven and the heaven of heavens belong to the Lord your God, the earth with all that is in it, yet the Lord set his heart in love on your ancestors alone, and chose you, their descendants after them, out of all the peoples as it is today. Circumcise, then, the foreskin of your hearts, and do not be stubborn any longer. For the Lord your God is God of God and Lord of lords, the great God, mighty and awesome, who is not partial and takes no bribe, who executes justice for the orphan and the widow, and who loves the strangers, providing them food and clothing." Well, the first thing to note about this passage is that it doesn't roll off the tongue the same way Micah 6:8 does. It's a little chewy, dense. But for all that, it's really not much different from Micah 6:8. Let's begin with the question itself. Moses' question to the children of Israel is almost identical to the question Micah asks. Almost. Here's the difference, and it is a notable difference. Moses adds the words, "your God," to the question. What does the Lord your God require of you? Now, it's a small difference, but perhaps it's significant. It makes the question more personal, more direct. But it also reminds the listeners that among all the gods in the world around them, that the Lord, Yahweh in Hebrew, that the Lord alone is their God. Not Baal, not Asherah, nor any of the other gods, only the Lord. Why is this significant? Because unlike in our day, when we assume that there really is only one God, in the ancient world, and even among the children of Israel, it was assumed there were many gods. It was just part of the world as they knew it. For Israel, therefore, the question of monotheism wasn't whether there were other gods, but which God or gods were they to worship. And of course, the very first commandment of the 10 Commandments is, "You shall have no other gods before me," or besides me. It was more like a marriage vow, to maintain an exclusive relationship with only one person, though there may be many people one could fall for. In this case, it was to maintain an exclusive relationship with this one God. And as in marriage, there were certain things that were expected in the relationship between the Lord and the children of Israel. For God's part, it was the never-failing covenant to love the people of Israel. For Israel's part, it was to honor that exclusive relationship. Now, Moses uses a number of terms here to describe this duty: to love God, to fear the Lord, to walk in the ways of God, to serve God, to keep God's commandments. All of these are just ways of putting meat on the bones of honoring God. Moses ends this little section by describing the character of the Lord. This is the God above all other gods. This God, unlike the other gods, is a God who, quote, "is not partial and takes no bribe, who executes justice for the orphan and the widow, and who loves the strangers, providing them food and clothing. In other words, the character of this God is one who cares for the weak, the outcast, and the marginalized, and who expects us to do the very same. No, this passage doesn't have the same ring as Micah 6:8, but the sentiment is the same. Do justice, love kindness, walk humbly with God. And now may God continue to bless you and keep you in all that you do this day and in all the days ahead.